today you will be able to find slope and the y-intercept from a table and from a graph, and we're also going to find it from words. Okay? So if I see slope intercept form, first thought, if we're going to write slope intercept form, y equals slope times x plus or minus the y-intercept. Okay, so y equals slope times our x variable plus or minus the y-intercept. Okay, and we're going to be able to look at our table and look at a graph to be able to determine y-intercepts and slope. Okay, remember B, we can look at B and think of it as kind of a start, a beginning, a fixed amount. The y-intercept, okay, is a starting amount. That one-time thing, like we were writing equations with a variable on both sides. We would have the repeating amount, that would be our coefficient, and times however many we have, which would be our variable. And then we'd have a constant, something that was just a one-time thing. It was a plus or a minus usually. Okay, and we have our slope. And our slope is going to be our movement, okay? Slope is the steepness of a line, something that repeats over and over again. Okay, so Luke's family goes to the movies and purchases a large popcorn. They are debating whether or not to purchase any drinks. The table below shows how much they'll spend on the number of drinks they decide to purchase. Okay, so here's our table. And when we look at our table, one thing to remember is that X generally almost always comes first. And then we've got our Y amount. Okay, and remember when we are looking for the y-intercept, we want to remember that X marks the spot when we're finding 0. Like finding Nemo, but we're finding 0. So we look for our X value of 0. And when we do that, then its corresponding Y value is our y-intercept. Okay, so that's the y-intercept question. What is this? What is the slope represented in the table? Okay, well yesterday we talked about our slope formula: y2 take away y1 over x2 take away x1, and it's the same thing that we've been doing. It's just the change in y over the change in x. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and use these two amounts for our y's, and so we have to have the corresponding x's. I'm going to call this y2, y1, so I'm going to have to call this x2 and x1. Okay, so we're going to take 10, subtract out 625, that's 625, over 1, take away 0, and that should give us $3.75 over 1. So what does that represent? It represents, should represent about $3.75. Goodness, let's see. $3.75 per drink. Okay, so what does the y-intercept represent? The y-intercept is what represents what, guys? The cost of what? What was the one thing that they bought? First thing. And it was the cost of the popcorn. That was the one-time thing. It happened once. They chose one bag of popcorn. Okay, so in our y-intercept form then, we're going to write that, okay, our output, that's the total cost. Total cost is the output. Y is our output, equals $3.75 per drink they buy, plus our bag of popcorn. Y equals 3 7/500 times x plus 625. Okay? And so the next problem. And remember, guys, these are things that you've already seen this year. Okay? This is our coefficient times our variable, and the 625 is our constant. So these are all interchangeable. Our y-intercept is our constant on our slope-intercept form once it's simplified to this equation. Number 2, Carly wants to buy some fish to keep in her room. At a local pet store, customers can pay $12.50 for a fish tank and $26 for each fish they purchase. So it says, what is the slope or the rate of change in this situation? Okay, well, we got our fish tank. Okay, so here we've got our little fish tank, and we know that we're going to have to pay $12.50 for the tank. And we want to have some little fishies in there. Okay, so we may have little blue fish, and we may have, oops, wrong thing, and we may have green fish, and maybe 2 green fish. Okay. And so here we've got 3 fish, and we may want to put more fish in there. What does it cost for each fish? That's our slope. So our slope would represent the cost per fish. What is the cost per fish? It would be 20 cents. Okay. 4.20. That would be our slope. What's the y-intercept? What's the one thing that they bought happened one time? So the y-intercept is our beginning, isn't it? It's $12.50. That's once, one time. Okay? Write an equation to represent the situation. Okay? So, again, we're going to look at what is our output, y. If we spend 20 cents per fish, and we also have to buy a tank. So y equals 20 hundredths times x plus $12.50. Or we could say that y equals 2/10 times x plus 12.5. Okay, that's just bringing it down to the simplest terms. Okay, so now we're going to look at our graph. Okay, so Betty's Bakery uses chocolate chip cookie recipe that calls for a certain ratio of brown sugar to butter as shown in the graph. Okay, so guys, what do you represent? What kind of a graph is that? You see that we have a y-intercept anywhere along this line. Let's see, we can highlight. Does the slope line pass through anything besides what? The origin. Okay, so when we're looking at a slope and we've got a proportional relationship, we can look and let's go ahead and put our x and y values. X and y. So I'm going to go here. Okay, so this point right there, x is 4, y is 3. And this point right here, x is 8, y is 6. Okay, so when we look at our change in y over change in x, so slope equals y2, take away y1, over x2, take away x1. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just call this then y2, y1, x2, x1. Okay, so I'm going to say 6 take away 3. Keep the same pattern. Take away 4. And that's going to give us 3 over 4. Okay. The thing, so what does 3 represent? It's going to be cups. And this is going to be butter. So it represents 3 cups of sugar. Sugar to 4 cups of butter. I should have put it there. Okay, one more time. So 3 cups of sugar to 4 cups of butter. That sounds very rich. Okay, so what is the y-intercept? And what does it represent? So the y-intercept is what, students? It's right there. So it's 0. So it represents 0 cups of sugar over 0 cups of butter. It represents that if we make nothing, we use nothing. Okay, so write an equation in slope intercept form. So we've got our slope. Okay, so our output equals our let's see, our 3/4 times our input. That's it. So since we didn't have a y-intercept, we didn't have to put a b. It's a proportional relationship. Okay? So let's go to the next one. Now we're just looking at a table. Okay? I think that you know how to go ahead and do this, but here is our x value. Okay, so this is going to be our input. And here is our output. Okay? So if we're looking for slope, we're going to take y2, take away y1 over x2, take away x1. Okay, so we'll just use these points right here. Okay, so I'm going to call this y2, y1, x2, x1. Okay, so that's going to give us then what? 6 take away. Take away what? Negative 0.25. Okay, so we still have to take away a negative. Okay, so that was x2, 0, take away what? A negative 5. Kind of have to be careful about that, don't we? Okay, what's that double negative give us then? I hope you thought of that on your own without me saying it, because often kids don't. So that's going to give us 6 25/100. And what's that double negative? It's going to give us a plus. Okay, so if I was going to divide that out, I think, how many quarters are in $6.25? So let's say there's 4 quarters in a dollar, so 4 times 6 is 24, plus 1 more is 25. How many quarters are in $5? So that would be 5 times 4 is 20. Okay, so we'll reduce that a little bit further. 5 over 5, so it looks like we've got 5 over 4. Our slope is 5/4. Now, if I've done it wrong, you guys did a good job of proving me wrong yesterday, so prove me wrong. 5/4. Okay, now what are we going to look for to find B, the y-intercept? Remember, we're looking for 0. And how do we find 0? X marks the spot. There's our x, so its corresponding y value, that's our y-intercept. There's our star. Okay, so our y-intercept is going to be 6. Equation, our output, y equals 5/4x, and this is a plus 6. Plus 6. Are you able to get that? It was kind of a hard one, wasn't it? Okay. You see how to do it. Okay. Guys, when you have this 1 and 1/5, remember we just, go backwards here. So 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 more is 6, so that's going to be 6/5. Okay. Or you can put in your calculator 1 plus 1/5. Okay? And that would have given you how you can turn that into a decimal. It's probably easiest to do it and turn it into a decimal, okay? Okay, so you have fractions. Fractions shouldn't scare you, okay? So I want you to go ahead and finish this off, and I hope this answers your questions. That we just have to work through this, okay? Thanks a lot. Hope you have some happy learning. Love you all.